Hello there, you are listening to The Screen Queen, where you'll be finding your favorite movie or your favorite television show and learning something new. You'll just have to listen to find out. Here is your host, Samantha Parrish. Hello and welcome back to the show, Screen Team. As always, and last time I checked, my name is Sammy Parrish, and you are listening to the host on the East Coast with the most, The Screen Queen. So before I get into the episode, I just want to say your host has been through hell this summer. I feel like everyone has been through hell this summer. Everyone that I have talked to has said how this has been a lousy summer. Everyone has felt they've been chewed up and spit out, and I wholeheartedly agree, because I feel like I've been chewed up and spit out all this summer. Making the show has been a challenge this summer, keeping up with deadlines, getting everything together. But you know we're all not Superman, even though we literally just saw one come out this summer. I wanted to keep going with having an episode out, but the delays that kept happening, and we're nearing 6 days left of August, and I don't want to push 2 episodes, so this is going to be the last episode of Action August. It's not the first time that everyone has their own energy, and I only have enough energy left for 1 episode before I go back to doing one for September. I don't want to throw the continuity out, so I'd rather make the sacrifice, and if it had to be this episode, I'm glad it's this one, because this is one of my favorite sequels from Lethal Weapon. So it is no secret that Lethal Weapon is one of my favorite buddy cop films. It was a joy to cover the first film, and it almost feels a little bit weird that we're skipping around and going from 1 to 3, but honestly, I feel like this one had to come sooner rather than later. When you look at a series that you stay with and you want the characters to make some progression, Lethal Weapon is one of the strongest examples. There's a reason you stayed all this time. The investment wasn't lost, especially around a third movie where you kind of wonder, are the characters going down or are they not? If you had to look at an entire film series and see where the strongest moments were, I would have to say it's this one, and I'm excited to finally talk about it. So here we go. The final episode of Action August with Lethal Weapon 3. Okay, so for those that have never heard about Lethal Weapon, I heavily advise you to go listen to my Lethal Weapon episode and get introduced to these beautiful characters of chaos. But I'm going to give you the synopsis anyway for this specific sequel so you know what's going on. So we follow Roger Murtaugh and Martin Riggs as they're doing their usual routine of absolute ridiculousness as they continue to be the people you cannot trust to work together. It is 10 days till Murtaugh's retirement. And wouldn't you know it, there is an ex-cop in the mist that is trying to do his own domestic terrorism with a bullet known as a cop killer, which I'm sure a lot of people know about now, but when you see it in a movie like that, it's like, looks like Riggs and Murtaugh have really met their match. Or have they? Because like something like that's gonna stop Riggs and Murtaugh. There's been 2 films where they definitely should have died and haven't yet, so something's not gonna stop them like that. Now, 3 films is a long time to have to stay with somebody. It's like the equivalent of getting to know someone. Like, what's their goals, their ambitions? Have they learned anything? Is anything going to prosper? Any changes? Like, you always want to see what is going to be in store for the future. And Lethal Weapon 3 felt like the investment was worth it. And I'd have to say it's because of the writers. When I did my research about why Lethal Weapon was the strongest, I was like, man, like the writing's too good. There's got to be a reason why it was too good. I mean, one of them being my Lord and Savior, Jeffrey Boehm, who is the reason why Lethal Weapon is Lethal Weapon. We could have had an entirely different movie, and probably not even a series, if it wasn't for this man making the changes so we would know Martin Riggs and Roger Murtaugh. But it wasn't just Jeffrey Boehm that also came in to continue the characterization of Martin and Roger. Another uncredited writer that I feel is also probably the reason why it's so strong. Carrie Fisher stepped onto this movie and helped it so much, and I can see why it is so good now. And you can always tell around some films that the writing is starting to kind of go downhill, and Even Jeffrey Boehm, as much as I feel he did a great job lifting up these characters, his ideas were dismissed, but appropriately dismissed. When you stay with characters, you want to still feel like you know the same guys and there's no dip in quality. The ideas that were given these characters didn't really feel authentic to them. There was an original storyline that Riggs was going to end up with Rhiannon, Roger's daughter, and it's like, that was already just a throwaway joke and that was never gonna happen. I mean, even Riggs joked about it. But then to have it happen is just kind of like Jackie and Fez getting together in that 70s show, like, okay, you're there, but I don't want to have you there like that. But then there was also going to be another idea of having a counterpart to Martin, where he would have met his match. That was going to be the male version of Lorna Cole. Now, that would actually be what would happen in the fourth film when Riggs actually meets his match, but in this one, more like matchmaker. And I feel like having him meet his match, that he met someone that would eventually kind of be like the perfect half to himself, someone that can throw punches and kick ass just like him, and he just stands back and he's like, wow, what a woman. Having that and not Rhiannon, like that instantly made the film 10 times better, and it felt like authentically action too. When you put romance and action together, sometimes that can just automatically detour a film. There are so many films in the action department that have been ruined by romance. This one was excelled by romance. And it didn't distinguish it, but it was something that felt appropriate to the character of Martin Riggs, that you do want to see this guy actually have someone. Like, he did not have the best of luck in the last film. But another reason why this movie is so amazingly badass, the director of photography, Jan de Bont, who the very next year in 1994 would go on to make Die Hard on a Bus, aka Speed. And since he's already been in the Die Hard department, he stepped on a Lethal Weapon and he's like, I know what I'm doing. I know this is not my first rodeo. But clearly, with the explosions and chaos going on in this film, this is a plus man in the action department. And it's just amazing. But another part of this movie that is absolutely amazing, and this isn't even the action because I had no way to segue this. This is one of the most underrated soundtracks I've ever seen. When I first watched this movie, I kept thinking, like, you know, I've heard this guy before that's singing, what's going on? Well, he had a familiar sting to him. Yeah, I didn't have a clever joke for that, but I thought, hell with it, let's do it anyway. So the guys that have always done the Lethal Weapon soundtrack is Michael Kamen and Eric Clapton. And this time, being the third film, these dudes had to bring in the best of the best of the best. And so they brought in Sting for the beginning and Elton John at the end. Sting sings a song called It's Probably Me. It's a good introduction. It's suave, it's sweet, it's Lethal Weapon. Like, Sting just knew what to do for this. It's not his first time having to be involved with the soundtrack. He's did Emperor's New Groove. He's helped out with many other collaborating songs. So he was like, tell me what I gotta do. And for what it's worth, it's a very underrated Sting song. But then there's the end of the movie where Elton John comes in with another severely underrated song, in my opinion. Elton John and Eric Clapton collaborated to make a song called Runaway Train, which is heard at the very end of the movie when the credits roll. This song is also on Elton John's album called The One, and I did my digging, and Elton isn't exactly up for affiliating with Lethal Weapon 3, like, nothing against it. He was like, it's a thing, but it's a good thing. It's a very underrated song. There's not too many Elton John collaborators, you know, that, unless they just, you know, go breaking your heart. But this was an underrated collaboration. I didn't expect an Elton John to appear for this movie. I mean, in between Fern Gully, Lethal Weapon 3, and then The Lion King, it's kind of a funny little timeline for his discography, but, you know, it exists, and I'm glad that it does. There are probably many action films that have their own unique soundtrack, but this is one that doesn't get talked about enough, so I just wanted to give it its highlights. But another part of this movie that makes it strong is it did something different with its villains. So here's the timeline of all the villains on Lethal Weapon. The first was Mr. Joshua, who was the right-hand man and ultimately became the final foe in Lethal Weapon, outdoing our main villain, who was kind of just like, the play for the real bad guy in charge. Then the second film, we have sort of the same thing with the right-hand man going after Riggs again, and then you have a villain that is just your rich and powerful, like, you can't touch me, blah, blah, blah. It's kind of the same thing. The right-hand man was going to be the ultimate bad guy. But then there's Jack Travis, and it's just Jack. There's not a wingman, it's just the main villain. Jack does have affiliations and accomplices, but they mean nothing. There's no room for a wingman with Jack Travis. It kind of goes back and forth since they both die at the same time and have different motives and everything else, and it's just to get the show over with. This one, there's no right-hand man. It's just a main villain. Anybody that works under the villain Jack Travis is just gone. They're not meant to live. There was never going to be intention that they were going to be long-lasting. I'm all for a villain that wants it to be just themselves in the end of it all, with nobody. Like, everyone involved with him, there was never going to be a future for them, and Jack didn't care if they had a future. All he cared about was what he wanted, which is kind of the whole point of a villain, that it doesn't matter who's involved, it doesn't matter what lives are lost, it just matters what is done in the end. And Jack wanted what he wanted, and no one stood in his way, even if it was the ones working under him or with him. But also, it shocked me to find out that I've actually seen this guy before. So the guy who plays it is Stuart Wilson, who would go on to one of my current favorite special interest films that I covered called No Escape, where he played the nuttiest villain that I have loved, named Merrick. What a shock to find out that this film that I've watched my entire life is actually also the guy from No Escape. I felt like I got myself bamboozled with how much I didn't put that together. But there's always those actors that don't change their voice, but they just know what to bring, so it makes such a unique character that you would never think, where have you seen this person from? Like, that guy just is really good at his job. From playing Jack Travis in here, Merrick in No Escape, and then eventually the Doctor on Hot Fuzz. Like, this guy has the strangest filmography, and I'm okay with that. But funny enough, Stuart Wilson wasn't the original choice to play Jack Travis. Originally, the consideration was for Robert De Niro to play Jack Travis, but, when you got a little somebody named Joe Pesci in there, as much as that would have been fun to see Robert De Niro play a villain in Lethal Weapon, it would feel a little bit too much like Goodfellas. And like, we already have them in so many movies, it would kind of take away from the identity that Lethal Weapon established. I mean, Joe Pesci was already kind of an unexpected inclusion that they were like, we weren't sure what we were doing with him in Lethal Weapon 2, but then he got an Oscar for Goodfellas, and we're like, we'll keep him. But it probably wasn't because of Goodfellas, and I'm glad they went with an underrated actor than a overrated actor. Now, I know it's funny in action films, I never think to wonder what happens with the debris, the broken pieces of a building from what had to be exploded, or cars that were just absolutely obliterated. And I actually found out that this film did do some recycling. The marble slabs from the buildings destroyed for the film are now tabletops in Florida. So right now, as we're speaking, there is someone in Florida eating on top of a piece that was once in Lethal Weapon 3, and now I'm instantly jealous of those people. But there's also another part of this film that would eventually be seen in the millennial age. There's a bad guy in here named Billy Phelps, who is played by Mark Pellegrino. And even though that's not a name that many people know, but it's a name that would eventually be known in a little show called Supernatural. Yeah, imagine my surprise being a Supernatural fan back in 2011 and then seeing this guy in Lethal Weapon 3 and being like, hey, I know you. It was so hilarious to tell all of my friends that love Supernatural that they want to see a young version of Lucifer, that they can see his ass get beat by Mel Gibson in this movie. Even though that guy would eventually go on to actually a pretty fucking good film career, from The Big Lebowski and Mulholland Drive and many things, and then of course Supernatural. It's kind of a funny little thing to see this was his like before fame hit role. Now, as much as I love this film for being a strong action movie, I love this movie for being strong in the character development. Like I said earlier, there's so much time spent to 3 movies where you do want to see what the life is going to be like for Riggs and Murtaugh. But then here comes a full circle moment. So in the film, Murtaugh shoots an assailant in self-defense to protect him and Riggs. But then to his shock and horror, the assailant turns out to be his son's friend, Daryl. And it just consumes Murtaugh with grief. He's got days to retirement, and he's already been demoted one time, lost a perp to the bad guy. It's not great. This is the thing he did not need. He had his own I shot a kid moment. But it's when Riggs has to come to his help. When in the original, in Lethal Weapon, and ends up, making a place for him to not feel so alone in the world. And that is definitely being repaid in that moment. When Riggs finds Roger and makes him come to an understanding, the thing that I love the most is he says, I have 3 beautiful kids. I love them and they're yours. There's so much that Riggs has in his own life thanks to Roger. He's known the love of a family. There's always a place for him at the table. He goes over every day. The family clearly loves him, and he knows that. He knows that this family loves Roger. And for someone that has always kept everything together to be the one to just throw it all away, he's not going to let his friend just do that. That is a true friend right there who is not about to let you throw away something that you have. Especially when grief can make you think those things. For Riggs to be someone that had nothing and telling Roger that he has everything and wants him to keep everything, it's like a nice full circle moment. But he does it in a way without having to say cliche things or generic things. He gives him a hard vibe check to not lose what you have. He doesn't tell him, how he's lucky and whatever and trying to make him feel bad. But he does have to make him come to his senses in the only way possible. There is a fear that Riggs does have when he retires, and he doesn't like the situation more than Roger doesn't like it. But when everything goes down and the retirement goes, there is going to be no more Riggs and Murtaugh. As much as it scares him that there's not going to be a partnership, he doesn't want to lose his partner more than not having him on the job. If that isn't character development, I don't know what is. But also, how would that line, I have 3 beautiful kids and I love them and they're yours, worked if they did the Rianne storyline? You see how this film ends up becoming stronger because they didn't do things that would deviate from the storyline? God, this movie's so strong. But there's something else that I found out that I would have never thought in a million years was going to be a hidden commentary, so to speak. Like, I walk into Lethal Weapon just expecting chaos, sometimes a butt, and a dog, and some fun. But it's the joke that Martin Riggs says that I didn't expect was going to be having a commentary behind it. So, in the final climactic building fight, or I should say construction fight, when Riggs is siphoning the gas, is a disgusting thing as it has to happen, and he goes, Exxon. I love that joke. But I had no idea that joke was actually meant to be a jab at Exxon. And I had to go and ask my mom about that. And I was very surprised that she had the answer for me, as moms do. So, Riggs' disdainful comment about Exxon is a reference to the extremely bad press regarding the massive oil spill and ecological disaster from the Exxon Valdez tanker that happened 3 years before Lethal Weapon 3 came out. So like today, where we have all those Dawn commercials with the ducks covered in oil and getting all rebuilt and whatever. So what I'm saying is, Mel Gibson did it first before the Dawn commercials to make an awareness for it. I mean, don't get me wrong, the Dawn commercials are beautiful and great, but Martin Riggs saying Exxon is just kind of beautiful. Would have never known that joke was actually a social commentary, but here we are. So I saved the best for last, because this is probably one of the most underrated post-credit scenes that I am going to tell you that not many people know about. When you look at something like Lethal Weapon that just exists for what it is, and then think it's over, and it's actually not, at the very end of it, when Elton John is singing the very last of Runaway Train, there's a police dispatch going on, and it's like, oh, there's still more of these idiots. Thank you, bring it on. And when you know it, it ends with the way it begins, and sometimes where that can feel like a weird full circle, this is just, one I don't mind being a full circle, because every time they do explosion, it ends up horribly wrong, and about all the right ways. But the way it has it with the dispatch saying, is it those guys again? It's like, oh yeah, we are back in business, like nothing ever happened. The fact that they come to another exploding building and they know they're going to get framed for this. Roger has just signed on for 10 more years, and this is his reintroduction to 10 more years. And with them saying, I'm too old for this shit, at the same time to officially end the movie, I mean, what more of a chef's kiss could you ask for in a movie? So for my final little musings about Lethal Weapon 3, I just hope the last Lethal Weapon is going to be as good as this one. Lethal Weapon 3 is like one of those perfect examples of a film that knows how to do character development. When you look at other franchises where some of the characters falter off, the action isn't as good, Lethal Weapon said, no, we're Lethal Weapon. We don't settle for settling. I mean, I would hope that Lethal Weapon 3 has some mentions in the new film. There were so many things that this film did to piece together parts of 1 and 2 together, and then after you had 4 that did what it did, I'm really hoping that 5 is going to be as good to piece everything together like 3 was as good to piece everything together so far. This was something that didn't necessarily change things, but it gave us things that we wanted to see, and it gave us action sequences, but above everything else, it gave us characters that you want to see save the day, but you also want to be okay. These are characters that save the day, but you also want their day to be saved too. You don't really see that too often in crime movies, or specifically buddy cop films, where they're just kind of there and they do their thing, save the day, but Lethal Weapon put some heart and soul into it. It's going to be having 5 films to show for it, but 3, it had the most heart of it all. And action, of course. And so, my friends, that is going to be an early end to Action August, and I have to say, for what we covered of The Fugitive, True Lies, Lethal Weapon 3, my goodness, this was a good amount of stuff. I have sat on those films for so long, and to give them their own little pedestal of what they've done for the action genre, I feel very proud as your podcast host that I got to present those, and thank you guys for listening to it. So now is the time for our regularly scheduled Screen Queen episode, and Lord knows I need a break, so at least it's good that we're going back to once a month until October. So let's find out what the next episode is going to be on the Screen Queen. We're back to the good old box that keeps having things fall out of it. I think it's time to get a bigger one, like a bigger boat. All right, let's get from the bottom because it's just what you do. Lord, what are you? Please be something interesting. Well, I asked for interesting, but I will also take easy too. For the next episode on the Screen Queen, we are going to be taking a trip back to 1984 with a little film that really cut loose. I mean, come on, it's called Footloose. There was no way I could make the joke. The joke made itself. Anyway, Thank you so much for listening and always tuning in despite everything that goes on in my life. It is nice to see that there are some people that do give this show a listen to, and it helps me to know that all the work is worth it. So thank you for being there. It means more than you know. And if you want to catch up with me in between uploads, you can find me on my Instagram at the Queen of the Screen. And if you would like to find an easier way to listen to me, I am now available on YouTube. All of the Screen Queen episodes are on my YouTube channel, The Mystical Space Witch. Just look for the girl with the glitchy glasses. And I always like to make a nod to my other part of my life with my writing work of my series Inglorious Inc. And if you want to see that absolute cluster of chaos and what it has entailed, you can find that bad boy on Amazon, and I have that link in the description box. Alrighty, you all take care now. Stay amazing. Don't be too old for this shit. This is your Screen Queen, signing off. Bye-bye!